Welcome to the Wikia July webinar on Wiki extensions. My name is Sarah Morales, and joining me today is Tim Quiverin and George Preibel. Today we're going to overview the basic extensions available to your wiki and how to enable them. Tim and Kirkburn will then do a deep dive into available extensions that are a bit more advanced and that you may not have heard of, and at the end we'll do a Q&A. So you might be thinking, so what exactly is an extension? An extension is a technical term for a feature or tool on Wikia. This includes features like chat, blogs, comments, and message wall. It's a part of our software that can be turned on or off and extends as a resource to you as an editor. Extensions can be almost anything: an editing tool, a wiki management tool, even a staff tool. On Wikia, we have many extensions, many of which are optional. These are either enabled by an admin or requested through staff. To enable as an admin, you just need to visit Wiki Features, where this can be found in the admin dashboard. All you have to simply do there is click to enable. Before any feature, though, is enabled, we highly recommend you talk with your community about it. Some extensions automatically disable other features, such as Message Wall, which when enabled, disables and archives talk pages. Others may encourage you to do certain actions, such as achievements. If you are on an active community, it's important to make other admins and editors aware of your interests and discuss the decision with your community first. Once everyone agrees, you can enable it in Wiki Features or contact staff if it's a feature that's not available by default. I'm now going to hand the mic over to Tim, who will be followed by George or Kirkburn to tell you about 8 extensions you might not be familiar with.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Quiverin, though you can find me here on Wikia as user.nascat. I am the Director of Technical Support, and I've been working here for nearly 4 years. In fact, I've been editing Wiki since 2005 and a longtime user of the same tools we'll be discussing today. We're going to cover 8 extensions in total today. I'm going to walk you through the first 4: Maps, Random Selection, Calendar, and Image Map. One of the extensions we've been working on lately is Maps. Maps allows for the embedding of Google Maps or Open Layers maps into a wiki page. Maps are a great tool for many wikis, no matter what your subject matter is. If you are a wiki about museums, you could want to show where a museum is located. If your wiki is about a television show, you could want to show a map of where that scene was set. And if you're a wiki about highways, you may want to map and highlight the roadway from end to end. Maps can be enabled by request, and there are lots of ways maps can come in handy. Let's show you how this works. The basic syntax of maps is shown here on the screen. The brackets may make it look like we are calling a template, but the pound sign indicates to the software that we're using a function of a specific feature. In this case, we are using maps display map function. In this first example here, we are simply asking maps to display San Francisco. Because all we are doing is giving maps extension the location, San Francisco, it fills in the map with its default settings. That means using the Google Maps service, marking a single point as indicated by the red marker, and showing the map view, not the satellite or any other view. Now, if you want to dive down deeper and make a more visual or interactive map, you can define further by adding more specific parameters. In this example, I am adding layers onto the map to show the current traffic in San Francisco and the bicycle routes that run through the city. We will give you a link at the end of this section to show you how all the map's parameters can be found, but first let's look at one more example. Here, I am making a few major changes to my map. This time, I am asking the map to display 3 different cities in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm also changing the map service from Google Maps to OpenStreetMaps Open Layers service. As you can see, Open Layers creates a very different and unique look to your map. Now let's look at a wiki that relies on the Maps extension. Routes Wiki is a popular wiki that describes some of the historic and modern highways of France. They use maps to illustrate the route, length, and direction of these highways. In this particular example, Routes Wiki is showing the satellite view of Google Maps and has also drawn a red line between the 2 markers to indicate the endpoints and route of a particular roadway. Here are some final tips about the Maps extension. The syntax on these maps can get tricky, especially if you're just starting to use the extension. Not to worry, the Maps extension has a built-in visual editor. Simply go to Special Map Editor, click what tool you would like to use from the top menu, either marking a single point, making a line, drawing a cartographic shape, and that's indicated here by the first arrow on the map. And then use the interface to zoom in, out, or pan towards the point you're trying to mark. Once you've made the map to your specific specifications, you can click Export to Wiki code from the bottom toolbar, which we've also highlighted here with the second arrow, copy the output, and then paste it into your page. As for all the special things you can do with maps, all the available parameters and live examples can be found on the documentation pages linked here. Now let's move on to random selection. This is actually enabled by default on every wiki on Wikia. Many wikis like to have fun facts or trivia posted on the home pages or different portals on their wiki. While it's always nice to see something unique about the wiki in that space, it's even better if there's a little variety to what the user sees. Random selection lets you list a few different options before randomly choosing one to display. Now let's look at a very basic example. In this page, we are going to ask what is someone's favorite color, but actually have the color chosen at random. To do so, you must start with a choose tag around the options you want the answer to be chosen from. Then each option must be wrapped in an option tag before you close out the choose tag. This will then result in a user, when they refresh the page in question, to be presented with a randomly chosen color. So when you go to this page, you could see any of three different colors: yellow, red, or invisible, which I guess is kind of a color. Now let's change some of the choices to show you what else you can do with random selection. The first thing you may notice is the weight parameter added to the option tag. The first option is 3 times as more likely to be chosen than the last option. You will also notice that we are calling a template as the option text. Any wiki text within the option tags will be rendered. So in this case, I am using the born template, which says, I was born in place A, but now I live in place B, and using random selection to determine what place A and place B are. So you can see that sometimes you'll get, I was born in District 11, but actually live in District 12, and then sometimes you'll see, I was born in a hospital, but now I live in a house. Here's an example from the Aeon Wiki. This randomly adds an image to the welcome message, so all welcome messages are not the same cookie cutter style. That wraps up random selection for us. It's a pretty neat tool with some simple syntax, so remember, you can put any wiki text inside the option tag, from images to templates to ordered or unordered lists. Another popular extension here at Wikia is the calendar extension, which can be enabled by request. Wikia has offered a number of calendar extensions in the past, but the one we currently offer is called Simple Calendar. Like Maps, Calendar is a neat visual add-on to your wiki, no matter what the subject of your wiki is. It allows people to see events, be it new episodes, conventions, game release dates, in a visible and colorful manner. This time, let's look at the basic use of a calendar function. Just like Maps, Calendar looks like a template, but with a calendar function denoted by a pound sign. The default displays a calendar of all 12 months during the current year. So here's a 2013 calendar on a wiki page. And again, just like in Maps, you can add more parameters to this tool to customize your results. Here we have asked to see only July 2013's calendar, as well as asked to only see the full names of the days of the week, as opposed to the default MTW, etc. abbreviations. You can also use CSS to customize the calendar to fit your wiki's theme and design. Here's a basic example where we tweaked the calendar by putting CSS in wikia.css page to have a purple header and more space between the days. And here you can see a calendar in use on the Nick Magazine wiki. Full list of all formats and CSS choices are at the Simple Calendar extension page on MediaWiki.org. Now let's move on to image maps. Many wikis have images that link you to a page. But sometimes images have a lot of different subjects or themes, and it's helpful to link to more than just one page. So let's say, for example, you have a picture of the American founding fathers signing the Declaration of Independence. It wouldn't make sense to have the image to link to just Thomas Jefferson when Benjamin Franklin, John Hancock, and others are clearly in the picture. So you may want to use an image map to make the specific signer's face link to their page. Image map is enabled by default and can be used in a variety of ways. How does image map work? Here you can see the code syntax for the image from the previous slide. That one image links out to 5 different wikis depending on where you click on the image. I know this may look a bit daunting, so let's break down what you are seeing. As you notice, there are specific terms that you can use within an image map. Not all of these are mandatory to use, but they allow for different levels of customization. Important ones you will see are image map, which is the tag to start and end, which you must use to actually create the image map. Desk, or short for description, which specifies location of the caption. Poly, which is the coordinates for links. This tells the system which part of the image should link to what page. Rectangle and circle. These are rectangular and circle coordinates, which essentially are like poly, but a very specific shape. And then default. Gives the default link if part of the image does not have one of the other shapes already drawn on it. Let's now look at an image map in work on a specific page. Here you can see the Dual Academy Harbor page on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki. They have an image map for particular spots on an island. If you were to hit edit, the code for the image map would look like this. I'm going to strip out some of the similar lines now so that we can focus on distinct sections. So here's a simplified version of that. File is the actual name of the file that the image is pulled from, so the island and the caption that is displayed when you hover over it. This also includes the size and placement of the image. Next is circle and the coordinates. These are saying where you want the circle to be located, what it should link to, and how big the circle should appear. The first 2 numbers are the coordinates of a location, so 59 pixels in to the right and 119 pixels down. The 10 is saying the circle's radius is 10 pixels, so 10 pixels in any direction from that 59 pixel, 119 pixel coordinate. And then lastly is desk, which states that the caption for the image should appear in the bottom left. And on either side of these definitions, you should see the image map tag. And this is the result, with each circle indicating a different link page. If you click on the image in a place that does not have a circle on it, you will be directed to the default link location. I'm now going to hand the mic over to Kirkburn, who will walk you through the final 4 extensions.
Hi, I'm Kirkburn, and I'm also on the community technical support team. I've been with Wikia for about 6 years and am mildly obsessed with arrested development. I'm going to be covering another 4 of our popular extensions: polls, dynamic page list, variables, and references. Polls are a good way to add interactive content to your wiki. In a nutshell, you can create a poll by adding the question and as many answers as you wish, and then the users can vote on them. All votes are tabulated automatically and display the totals to all viewers. They are a great way to encourage new users and get them involved on your wiki. Polls are enabled by default, and here you can see an example poll from Burnopedia. So, how do you create a basic poll? All you need to use is the poll tag. The first line under the tag is the question, and this is followed by the answer options. In this example, we are asking the user what their favorite color is, followed by the options of red, green, blue, or other. You then add a closing poll tag to end the list of options. The number of options is unlimited, but we recommend not going too crazy. Each user can only choose one option to vote on, but they can change their vote at any time. Polls have a fluid width of whatever the width of the current article space is. To modify the design, you can wrap the poll in a template, as Burnopedia did, or you can also use local CSS customization. Here is an example of the same poll from earlier with some CSS changes. You can see that we adjusted the colors and the font styling. A couple of tips and information you should be aware of. To keep up engagement, we recommend updating your polls from time to time to keep up with your wiki topic. For example, if you're a TV wiki, you could update the poll weekly to match the latest episode. So you are aware, anytime you edit the question or the options, the votes on that poll will reset. So if you want to keep the already acquired votes, don't adjust that poll, but rather create a new one. Let's move on to the Dynamic Page List extension, otherwise known as DPL. This extension creates a list of pages based on a number of parameters you specifically define and will automatically update pages that now meet or no longer meet this criteria. This is often used on wikis for maintenance of pages, or lists of characters with certain features, and many other ways. DPL has a lot of options, and some queries can be quite complex. The most common form of DPL is just a standard bulleted list of pages. It requires a certain level of selection criteria, which is typically a single category, but can include several categories or specific pages. For example, IonWiki uses it to display information such as skill or quests. Here you can see we are displaying a simple list of 5 skills from the Gladiator Skills category. This extension is not enabled by default and must be requested. Here's a more advanced version showing pages marked for deletion that is primarily used for wiki maintenance. As you can see in the query, I want to get a list of all pages in the Candidates for Deletion category, but I do not want any of the candidates for speedy deletion or copyright violations. Those are actually tabulated in another table. For the sake of time, I won't be going into all the parameters here and what they mean. At the end of the segment, we will give you a few links so that you can review all of these parameters, but I wanted to show you what a more complex query looks like. So, what will this result in? Here, you can see the table generated from the query in the last slide in the leftmost box. On the page, I actually have 3 DPL queries, including candidates for deletion, candidates for speedy deletion, and suspected copyright violations. This one was created to give users a chance to discuss a page that is tagged for deletion before admins go ahead and remove them. As I mentioned, DPL is a great tool, but can get complex as well as taxing on the page load time, so here's a couple of pieces of advice. It works best with good categorization. Since DPL often pulls from categories, it is important to have a good category structure and to make sure to categorize pages properly. Be specific. DPL can display up to 500 results, so the more specific the query, the more useful your results will be. Only use it where needed. Some extensions can do what DPL does, but better. For example, if you're only interested in seeing pages that are in 2 different categories, use the Category Intersection extension instead of DPL, as that tool is simply better suited for that specific purpose. And a list of DPL parameters can be found on the help page listed here. Now, on to variables. Variables are shortcuts for small pieces of information that may be repeated and modified multiple times on a page. It is generally used within templates, and the extension is enabled upon request. This slide shows 3 of the variable functions in action. The first is used to define what the variable's value is. The second is what you need to write in order for this to display. So here we are defining a variable called last name with the value Manley, just like our very own Sarah Manley. To display Sarah's last name, all you have to do is write on the page var last name. Now, it's convenient we made this a variable because Sarah got married last year and changed her name to Morales. So instead of having to update her last name in many places, all I have to do is update the variable's value. So writing var define last name with Morales. This will mean everything below it on the page will now use the new value. The third option shown here allows you to both define and show the last name at the same time. So rather than needing to have extra lines of wiki text that don't display, you can do it all at once. Later on the page, you can still use var last name to display the text. This also works if you want to change the variable halfway through the page. So, as a very basic example, if we were writing the biography of Sarah, here is where we would start. We would define her last name and state where she was born and went to college. Here, she has the last name Manley. Now, in 2012, Sarah got married. So within our biography, we want to change her last name from 2012 onwards to Morales. We can do that with the var define echo, as you see here. From this point onwards in the page, Sarah's last name will change to Morales rather than Manley. And here is the result of those above set of lines. You can see Sarah is born, has her maiden name, gets married, and her last name changes, and all future mentions of her last name will appear as her married last name. Variables are helpful for repeating as well as updating terms and can be adjusted on the fly at any time. Now let's chat about references. References are a great way to let users know where the information was gathered from, be it a website, book, magazine, movie, newspaper article, etc. They are enabled by default on your wiki and are very easy to use. You can see here on the Harry Potter wiki that a reference is being used to cite the date Hermione was born. The references extension requires you use two tags on a page. The first is ref, which defines the text of the reference and adds the footnote link to the article. The second is references, which defines where you want the list of references to be placed on the page, which is typically at the very bottom of the article. Here you can see an example of a sentence on a Harry Potter wiki in which a fact about Harry Potter is being referenced to a particular book. It's all that easy to do and use on your wiki. I'm now going to hand the mic back to Tim for a few takeaways in our Q&A.
Thanks, Kirkburn. We know that was a lot of information on extensions, and that's honestly not all of the extensions we offer, but just that's a high-level overview of 8 extensions we get asked a lot of questions about, and we wanted to go over them today with you. A couple of general points about these extensions and others. First, when using an extension, it's important to pay close attention to syntax, because most often when a function breaks, it's simply because the syntax used was either incorrect or was missing an important part like a close tag. That's why it's important to always test out what you are adding. Another area to remember is just because an extension exists, it doesn't mean you need to use it on your wiki or on every page on your wiki. Adding lots of complex code slows down how fast a page can load and makes it trickier for others to edit. Using these tools where they work well, and not just for the sake of using them, makes your wiki better. If you know of an extension for MediaWiki that Wiki is not yet using, please feel free to contact us with more information about it. We are constantly reviewing available extensions and do genuinely welcome new ideas. Please, though, do keep in mind that we can't add everything. There are security and performance and maintenance concerns that we need to keep in mind when maintaining a fast and secure site. Now, if you're looking for help, there are 2 extension pages you can check out, as well as a link to our community forum. We have an amazing community of editors who know the ins and outs of these extensions. Don't be afraid to ask. And speaking of asking, though, we do have a chance now for some Q&A. Sarah, we got some great questions in, don't we?
Yeah, we have some really good questions, so thanks, everyone, and thanks to Kirkburn, Tim, and Matt in the background here. Just before we do the questions, as we're collecting them all, I want to just remind you that these webinar series are recorded as well as done monthly. So our next one is August 16th, and it's going to be on admin's rights, tools, and roles. This is a great, if many of you here may be experienced editors but deal a lot with new editors, this is going to be one that's really good for new admins about what their rights are, what their tools are, and what kind of their role is. Everyone can always find webinars and recordings on our webinar page. So we're going to start with some general and get specific, and please feel free to keep sending them in. So to the crowd, why are certain extensions only available on request rather than on the dashboard?
There's a few different reasons. The ones that are on the dashboard have been recently developed by Wikia's specific product team, because extensions can be developed either by Wikia or MediaWiki, and ones being developed by Wikia specifically go on the dashboard because they're written specifically to fit in that dashboard. Other reasons why some features may not be in the dashboards, we like to talk with users about why they're enabling them. Extensions such as DPL for the performance reasons or variables or other things such as that, they are very powerful tools. So we always like to make sure that users know that there are some small risks to using these tools. Also, just to confirm they understand what these extensions do. And in general, I think a good final reason is simply because we like to know what's popular. We obviously the tools that are designed by Wikia that fit in the dashboard, we can see how many wikis are using them and how many aren't. Help us make decisions. For those that we cannot fit in the dashboard, it makes sense for us to kind of understand how many people are using it. A good example would be variables. I can go into our stats database and see how many wikis have variables on right now. And that way, if we have a bug about variables, I can figure out, if it's an important bug or if it's a tool that not many people are using, we can maybe plan on working on it later.
Yeah. So to that, are variables enabled by default? No, they're enabled by request because they are one of the kind of stronger extensions that may have an impact on page load. And also, how do I request features or extensions? Send us an email, community@wikia or support@wikia, and ask us away. We can't promise we'll be able to enable it, but we will check it out.
Yeah, if you ever run into special contact, usually it'll be me, George, or Tim Collins. We'll be able to reply to you and get the extension going on your wiki in a fairly quick period of time.
Yeah, so we welcome ideas as well. If it already exists in MediaWiki, even better. Okay, so let's break it out here. We have questions basically related to almost everything we asked about. So let's start with image maps. So question is, will standard HTML image maps work in MediaWiki core, or may only the extension be used?
So MediaWiki supports a number of HTML tags. An image map, I believe, is a fairly new tag added to HTML in HTML5. However, MediaWiki does not support every single HTML tag. And I just looked, and I don't believe MediaWiki currently supports the image map tag. I saw a few extensions out there that take an HTML input and then convert it to an image map code for MediaWiki. But as such, I do not believe the basic HTML markup for image map is supported on MediaWiki.
Okay, so thanks, Tim. Next question, calendar. Does calendar have any compatibility issues?
Not to my knowledge. George and I, we work on tickets a lot, and I don't think either of us have seen any major tickets about the issue. So as far as I know, calendar should be good to go. Of course, if there's any bugs with extensions, usually, unfortunately, because they're third-party extensions like calendar, those are usually honestly left to the extension developers to fix. But if there's a major incompatibility and it's a quick fix, then we'll try to do our best. Yeah. So if there's a bug, let us know. We'll either point you back to the extension developer or we'll try to fix it ourselves.
Yeah, and a good thing with compatibility also is to check that your browser is up to date, your operating system's up to date. Sometimes we get tickets related to extensions, and it said someone's on an old version of their browser, so that can be it too. So that's just general housekeeping. Okay, DPL. Can DPL be used in the Wiki's navigation bar?
No. I don't know if it's technically possible, but please don't. That's my humble request to you, the community. DPL, as we mentioned, it is very hard on performance because of the caching, but also just the fact that it's literally querying the database very directly. I don't know how the navigation bar is exactly cached, but I imagine that bar updates constantly, and since it's on every single page load, it would really, 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 really hurt your wiki's performance. So please don't do that.
A basic question I see just came in relating to maps now. What map providers are supported aside from Google Maps and OpenStreetMaps or OpenLayers?
As far as I know, those are the only two currently in Maps. They used to have Yahoo Maps, but Yahoo Maps is kind of being deprecated by Yahoo themselves, or I can't remember what's happening with them, but they were moved from the extension before we installed it. So as far as I know, those are the only two. The extension developer is a very friendly, very open-minded developer. If there's a specific service out there that you think would be a good fit for Maps, I'm sure you're always free to leave a message on his talk page, and he can either take it under further consideration or perhaps tell you why we can't use it. But yeah, those are the only two insofar as I've found documentation on.
Another maps question just came in from checkout. If a wiki has been using old school Google Maps extension, did everything get successfully converted to the new map extensions, or do local admins need to look out for any issues?
Great question. Luckily, our community engineering team, a big shout out to Kamil in Poland, he wrote a really great script that automatically went through every single wiki that had the Google Maps extension on it and converted it into a Google map. It was a very smooth transition. We had one or two wikis with some very special maps. We worked with them directly. And as far as I know, every single map was converted on Wikia as of about late May. It was an important thing because Google Maps, which is a tool we used to have, Google no longer supported the API version that extension was dependent on. And as such, in order to get Google Maps or any current maps to work, we had to change the extension, and luckily that went very well. So.
And a question of, is Maps compatible with Semantic Maps?
Semantic Maps is a separate extension for the handful of communities that have Semantic Media Wiki enabled. They're free to write in, and I'll talk to them about it. I believe we have that technically in our code base, but I haven't actually tested it yet. So, okay.
And so the
guinea pigs, welcome.
If someone wants to say use a different type of map, Bing Maps, that's something that it needs to go through the MediaWiki developer?
I believe so. I don't think Bing is. I have not seen any documentation on Bing Maps being supported officially.
So a lot of times, if we know these are official, like MediaWiki, it's often best to just check out. If you go to MediaWiki.org and just look for maps, and also seeing who's developing there. And
you put extension colon. It's the prefix, the extension prefix, and then whatever extension name is. Obviously, as we mentioned, some are developed by Wikia. I mean, George, you want to talk a little bit about that? How some are developed by other people and then somehow are developed by Wikia?
Yeah, our product team sometimes finds certain features that we want to do that perhaps haven't been made by those outside of Wikia, or we simply want to do one in a different form that we feel has a better fit for Wikia, so they'll work on that.
Cool. Yeah. And actually, now that we have George, we have some variables questions. So variables are just, question is, so are variables just a page-specific version of templates without the parameters?
They are quite similar to templates. The example we gave is a very, very simple example, and is one that is unlikely to be used in the real world. Variables are generally used in templates for doing more complex techniques, such as modifying numbers and things like that. So while the example we gave shows how they work, that's not necessarily how you would ever see them in the real world, because to go through that would take far too long.
Like most extensions, there are definitely levels of complexity, and you can use variables in many different ways. Common way we see it is with incrementing page a number count on a page. Like if you've used a certain person's name a number of times, you can always count the number of times that's been done using variables. So definitely it does behave like a template on a page in a sense. Obviously the behavior is a bit different, but I think you're on the right track.
And why is it when you define a huge variable that calls several templates, it refuses to define it? Too heavy, too big? Sometimes
I believe the variable name has to actually be be just plain text. If you're talking about when you're actually defining the variable and you're using templates inside of it, it should work. I personally use, to be frank, some very complex templates using variables, and I never really had a huge issue with it. So you need to make sure your template is actually behaving, that the template that's being defined with the variable needs to actually be working properly. You need to make sure it's actually returning a usable result. And then you also, as we mentioned, make sure you're closing every tag, because it's very easy with variables and templates when you have that many brackets to miscount how many brackets there are. Honestly, I use templates that have like 15 straight brackets where you're closing things out. I know Sarah's rolling her eyes at the thought of that, but it's very, very easy to miscount and then end up with some sort of unexpected result, especially with something like variables.
Another question just came in. Is there a limit to how many variables you can use on one page?
As far as I know, no. I don't think variables count as an expensive parser function. That's a big term. Some of the techie people will probably recognize that term. I don't believe it does, but there could be. I mean, we haven't really ever tested it. So,
Yeah. I think the one thing which Tim said at the end in the conclusion too to remember is yes, you want to use these tools, but you don't want to use them everywhere all the time because one, it makes it hard for folks to then participate on your page. Say someone wants to add something, they come through and there are a bunch of scary looking brackets and code. It's going to make it harder for them. It also can slow down page load if they're constantly having to run different queries. It's it starts to be expensive. And one thing that you will hear in the tech world is that the longer your page takes to load, the less likely someone's staying on it.
It hurts the SEO. It hurts the user experience. I mean, it's risk versus reward. It's obviously these tools can add content or logic to what content shows on the wiki, but at the same time, there's definitely a risk of overdoing it and making it crazy hard for editors to edit it or making it really difficult to load. And at the end, you have to make sure that the page performs in a way that an average editor could open it up, figure it out, and improve the page further on.
Yeah, and actually one of the last comments we'll add, and then we'll about end the webinar, is actually this was a debated piece of advice that is coming from the crowd here that Tim and Kerper wanted to add, but I left out.
What do we do?
No, left out was on
okay.
DPL. The note was advise everyone when you're doing DPL to set the option for allowed cache results to true.
Yeah, by default, that is what happens.
That does happen by default. I didn't want to scare anyone off with the words caching, which again, if you're techie, you'll know what that means. But for all of us not as techie, sounds scary. Yeah, but yes, if you are adjusting anything with the cache, please leave it to true, because if not,
Yeah. I do want to address kind of a series of questions we're not honestly going to answer because they're very technical heavy. A lot of people asking about what you can do in writing a MediaWiki extension. Some people out there may be interested in writing a MediaWiki extension. MediaWiki extensions can range. I mean, there are some ones that are very deeply written, some very complex ones. Parser functions is a great example. And then there are some very simple ones that don't honestly add a lot. They're a very simple add-on. Go to MediaWiki.org. There's a really good documentation because MediaWiki, being an open source software, has to have good documentation to keep going. They spend a lot of time thinking about how to explain how to write an extension. So MediaWiki extensions can do just about anything. It depends on your level of code, depends on what you're trying to do. There's obviously always going to be some limitations. MediaWiki being open source means that sometimes there's just some holes in it because people haven't spent lots and lots of time together in a paid workplace environment to build it. And so you may not get exactly what you want, but at the same time, it's out there. There's some good documentation. If you're really interested, go to MediaWiki.org. Get involved with the IRC channel for developers. They're very friendly there. And also check out their regular IRC channel is also very active as well. So you can always ask questions. And they also have a very active mailing list I'm part of. So you can definitely use those resources there. We'd love to see Wikia, Wikians code. Many of our best users, most longtime active ones, have some very strong knowledge of code, and sometimes they give us stuff that we're able to use. And if we're able to use it, that's great. But at the same time, MediaWiki is the avenue really to go through for the most part.
Wonderful. So I want to thank you all for attending the webinar. Feel free to send in any follow-up questions. And I want to thank Tim, Matt, and Kirkburn for all of their help with this webinar. And happy editing to everyone.